at this point. So we're going to take a look at this radar again real quick. And as we can see, this rotation is speeding up intensely, and it is moving northward at a higher speed. Now we're moving north at 18 miles per hour, and it is expected to increase very soon. But now we're going to cool things off just a little bit and take a look at some photos that we've gathered, documenting pictures and preparations for Hurricane Idalia. So we've got some sandbags, electrical companies getting ready to help with power outages and whatnot. And also, this is a reminder, power outages are very likely, especially now that we're seeing these higher impacts that are highly likely and possible. We've got our satellite imagery from earlier today, seeing just the wide impact and spread of the storm, and businesses preparing as well as power lines. Taking a look at Fox weather, we're seeing, again, moving north 18 miles per hour. This was at 10 p.m. It was tracked as a Category 2 and rapidly intensifying. We're seeing all of these areas under a hurricane warning, tropical storm watch for central Georgia and southern South Carolina. So conditions will continue to worsen. Make sure you are ready and prepared to be ready for those effects. Again, we're probably seeing landfall here in Tallahassee within 2-3 hours. So things are picking up very rapidly. And again, our storm surge is looking highly dangerous with up to 12 to 15 feet in that Big Bend, armpit type area of Florida. So things are looking very tough out here. And we've got this radar here as well, showing us potential landfall location as well as potential Category 4 impacts that will be arriving soon. And as for some social media updates, make sure to keep in touch with the National Weather Service and National Hurricane Center in Tallahassee. Make sure to keep your weather alerts and notifications on throughout the night. Do not keep on Do Not Disturb. That is a bad idea. It is likely that there will potentially be alerts overnight, and you want to make sure that you are aware enough to hear them. As well, hopefully you are already in a shelter location. If you're potentially living in a mobile home, you have made your way to shelter locations, and if you are at risk in any other way. And again, so these are the shelter locations. We've got Childs High, Godby, Lincoln High, Rickards, Sale, Fairview Middle, and Fort Braden K through 8. So if you're here in these areas, make sure to stay safe and connect. Make sure your family is doing okay. Now we're going to take a quick look at power outages throughout Florida. So Wakulla County is currently experiencing the most power outages, 561 out of 17,000, and conditions will continue to worsen, and power outages will as well throughout this Big Bend region, especially looking into Leon County as we move throughout the night. But other counties are also experiencing power outages. Levi 18, Gilchrist 32, Alachua 22, 261 Columbia County, 203 Putnam County, 161 Clay, Duval 11, and Pinellas County is experiencing a lot of power outages with nearly 2,000 power outages. So again, make sure you have all of your technology ready to go, powered up, put on your low battery mode. Make sure to conserve your battery for when you will need it most throughout the early morning hours and into tomorrow morning as well. So again, we're just going to look back at the National Hurricane Center real quick and take a close look at the most recent update. So again, most recent public advisory, we're seeing currently 185 miles south of Tallahassee, And now Ryan's going to give us a look over on our radar wall.
Yeah, thank you, Priscilla. It's kind of eerily calm out over Cedar Key, where the storm could potentially be making landfall as a Category 4 hurricane. But I really quickly want to say, let's all just take a deep breath, okay? It's been a long afternoon. It's been a long evening. It's going to be a long overnight. Let's take a deep breath. Let's relax. We're going to get through this together, okay? It's going to get loud. It's going to get scary, especially into the overnight hours. But let's take a quick deep breath, okay? Okay, so we're going to get through this. It's going to get loud, but we're going to get through this. It's going to be a loud storm. There's going to be a lot of lightning. There's going to be a lot of, scary weather ahead. But truthfully, we are going to get through this together, okay? And if we lose power, we'll do the best we can to stay with you, both on Twitter, on X, on Facebook. We noticed as Idalia, now expected to make landfall as a Category 4, currently Category 2 storm, is really starting to develop that eye, as seen by visible satellite, just after about 11 o'clock here tonight. And the hurricane hunters have been flying through Idalia all afternoon. It looks like they've now just landed, but they did find winds and pressure lowering, so it is, of course, now a Category 2 storm. And we're really just going to pay attention to our radar all through the evening tonight. Fort Myers, right now, you're getting some good storms. National Hurricane Center actually just put out an 11 o'clock update. 4 o'clock, or Category 4 hurricane, rather. Big Bend region, their big concern right now is storm surge. So if you live in a coastal community and you've been told to evacuate and you have yet to evacuate, please do so now. The time is quickly running out. Okay, please pack everything you need and just drive towards higher land away from water. Find local shelters. We have shelter openings all over the Big Bend region, all throughout central and southwest Florida, as Idalia is closing in on making landfall here in the Big Bend. I would say we're only probably 7 hours or so away. If we can put a quick little measurement from the center of Idalia all the way to Tallahassee, about 195 miles, so less than 200 miles away from here making landfall, and it's going to be pretty close to us here in Tallahassee. All the areas in yellow are tornado watches right now, all along the I-75 corridor. We're talking Marion County. These are the counties that have a higher risk as we go into the overnight hours for a chance of a quick spin-up tornado. The tropical tornadoes are typically more of a quick spin-up, weaker tornado, but of course, nonetheless, there can be a tornado found within these storms. Now, as it sits for spaghetti models here in Tallahassee, we are going to be looking at an impact possibly in Wakulla, Jefferson, Taylor County with a Category 4 major hurricane. Like I said, we're going to get through this together. It's going to be a loud night, but just stay with FSU Weather and stay with your local authorities. We're going to work through this together, okay? We're a strong community, and we will get through this. We always will. As this storm starts to make its way closer and closer, the convection is finally starting to reach us here in Tallahassee. Now, I put a pause on the wind speed. So this pink is winds greater than 81 miles per hour. Remember, a Category 4 hurricane, we could be looking at possibly 120 plus mile per hour winds with this storm. And so as it approaches landfall, this is at 6:24 a.m. just off the coast of Wakulla County, and it looks like maybe coastal Jefferson County, maybe coastal Taylor County. And then as we get closer to landfall at about 8:30, once it starts with that land interaction, it's going to weaken, but we're still going to be dealing with some strong winds associated with that eye wall. So no matter where you live in the Panhandle, we are going to be experiencing some major hurricane conditions as, again, expected to become Category 4, currently seeing a Category 2 hurricane is going to be making landfall in the Big Bend region into the overnight hours tonight. 130 mile per hour winds is the expected landfall at about 8 a.m. tomorrow. So as we enter the overnight hours, again, we're going to be tracking the storm as it goes through very warm Gulf of Mexico waters. We're just going to keep tracking it. We're going to be with you as long as possible. We might lose power, but if we do, we're going to do our best to keep you informed on Twitter, on Facebook, anywhere we can get to you. We're going to try to communicate the information, as well as try to get communications from FEMA and other emergency response organizations. Aaron, I'm going to pass it off to you for more information.
Yes. So, again, we want to talk about threat here. That's the biggest thing we've been trying to drill in here on FSU Weather over the night, as we've seen, again, this storm being, at least becoming a really catastrophic storm here. So the Safford-Simpson scale, that is the scale to which we use to actually rate these hurricanes here. So we've already passed Category 1 through 2 at least. We're on the verge of Category 3 here, very closely here. And unfortunately, at least the National Hurricane Center is calling for a Category 4 at landfall, which is very extreme conditions here. And unfortunately, we're looking at that here over the next several hours. So make sure to stay tuned here. So Category 1, 74 to 95 miles an hour. We've already seen that with Idalia. Moderate as well for Category 2, 96 to 110 miles an hour at the center. And again, I want to stress this out too. This is the center of circulation, not the whole system. This is just right in the middle of where the core is at. So the eye wall, that's where the winds are spinning the fastest, especially over the water, as there's less friction there. So Category 2. Category 3 is where we start to classify these storms as major hurricanes here. And that's where Idalia is here on the verge of becoming. From there, winds 111 to 130 miles an hour with at least coastal surge potentially 9 to 12 feet. And what now Idalia is forecasted to become a Category 4, 131 to 155 miles an hour, with storm surge 13 to 18 feet. Some spots, and of course, it can be locally higher depending on tides and all that as well. So, again, even though Idalia right now is not a Category 3 officially right now, I mean, according to the numbers here, we don't want to stress on the category. The wind is it's the big deal. So, just like we've seen with Michael or what we've seen with Ian too, just because it was just on the verge of a Category 5 does not mean that it was any different than a Category 5 hurricane at that level there, because we had the significant weather the same basically at that category there. And again, Category 5, which we hopefully not going to see here, but 155 plus mile per hour winds. So storm surge, the biggest problem, of course, is storm surge when it comes to, of course, at least impacts from tropical systems. So again, most people are unfortunately, at least most of people's lives are taken by storm surge, unfortunately, here in water. So that's why you always want to say, you run from water, you hide from wind, because of this reason. Because again, for the most part, winds, you can take shelter in a building, in a sturdy building. But if you have water coming into a building and there's no way to get out, that's unfortunately the outcome of a lot of people and stuck in storm surge. So at normal level here, we have, again, some waves crashing, hitting near the house there. So getting a little windy here. As we increase the wind here slightly, 3 feet with storm surge, 6 feet, again, going towards the doorstep, 12 plus feet, which we're actually expecting and forecasted over some parts of the Big Bend right now. That's going to go over potentially on top of your roof, potentially. And that's catastrophic. Again, I'm not quite 6 feet, but if you take our other guy here, Ian, other student meteorologist who is 6 feet, you stack them twice on top of one another, then you got basically 12 feet storm surge, and basically it's up to the roof level. So if it's a one-story house here. But again, this is really severe, dangerous. That's the biggest killer when it comes to landfalling tropical systems. So pre-storm advice, which at this point it's kind of already overdone now, but so you want to stay weather aware, watch for NHC and NWS updates. Again, we've already seen, as we've kind of been going on, it's more nowcasting as opposed to kind of forecasting what may happen with the storm. We kind of already have an idea of what's going to happen. You want to assess the area, make plans, know how to evacuate, know your routes of course, if you're told to leave, and help neighbors as well. It's the biggest key, too. You want to make sure that you stay safe and as well as your neighbors if they can. Try and help one another for a sense of community. Again, throughout the storm, you want to make sure you stay hunkered down, stay in a shelter. But also for the post-storm, you want to make sure you pay attention to local officials for any info and instructions. Avoid electrical equipment. So again, just because a power line is on the ground does not mean that it's a safe thing to touch. It could still be active, and that could potentially kill some people. So again, you don't want to risk that. And then save phone calls for emergencies and document damages, as you want to preserve as much battery and electricity as you can, as it's possible, and especially in Tallahassee, that we could be losing power by tomorrow at landfall. So again, we want to make sure you stay weather aware here on FSU Weather. But as we go to the next segment here, we're going to talk about, for the most part, hazards, what we might expect here across the area. So current watches and warnings, we have hurricane warnings in effect for much of Tallahassee down through the Manatee County into the Sarasota counties. We also have a tornado warning, or not tornado warning. We have a tropical storm warning from about Collier County upwards through at least the eastern Florida peninsula, extending to Jacksonville into the Carolinas now, which will eventually be the track of Idalia later on after it makes landfall somewhere on the Big Bend here. And then also some tropical storm warnings also in effect off to our west. So GFS forecast wind speeds, you don't want to really pay attention to where at least the exact wind speed here on these models, because again, a lot of times winds change with friction of the land and other factors like that. And of course, depending on where exactly it makes landfall, if you have a wobble to the east or a wobble behind me to the west is where you could potentially see those strongest winds. So if in fact this does go over Tallahassee here, again, that'll be the strongest winds, around the strongest winds of the hurricane. And we want to make sure you stay hunkered down. You want to treat this as like a tornado warning. It's at least most products, at least recently I should say, the National Weather Service has been issuing high extreme wind warnings, and that's only issued for rare events where winds are above 115 miles per hour. And it's possible we may get close to that, if not see that at landfall, unfortunately. Of course, we want to monitor, and if you are in that extreme wind warning, if that comes up here, whether in Tallahassee or a little bit further to the east, you want to make sure you stay in that building at sturdy structure and wait until the first eye wall, and then of course if you go into the eye, and then behind that, the second eye wall coming through from behind, because again, a lot of people might catch people off guard too, because you have wind coming from one direction, and then stopping, and then coming from another direction. That's kind of how a hurricane works with at least circulation. So you want to watch out that if you do end up getting in that eye wall. And then GFS calms things down as we get into your day, or at least after tomorrow evening, and then into your Thursday is where we expect the winds to begin to die down. Euro is kind of showing the same story. I mean, there's not really much more to explain, at least with these two models. We're just kind of just watching what's going on radar right now and seeing any trends that may occur. But at this point, at least forecast pretty rock solid, set on point. We're kind of expecting what we're going to see here over the next several hours. So make sure to stay tuned and kind of stay tuned on FSU Weather, and also stay tuned also to your local emergency management and also National Weather Service and National Hurricane Center offices, as they'll provide you the best official information of the storm. So here on at least with the Weather Prediction Center, they are trying to forecast in terms of where the greatest flood potential is here. And as I mentioned previously, the biggest risk with landfalling hurricanes here are the water. So that includes storm surge, any kind of rainfall inland as well. And especially even worse too, if you actually combine the two, especially around bay areas where you might have water coming in from inland and then also storm surge coming out or going in from the Gulf of Mexico, that actually can artificially rise the water level a little bit higher than perhaps predicted. But again, the highest flood potential, again, for flash flooding, I should add, is at least for the rest of tonight into tomorrow, is going to be right around at least the bend here, the northern Appalachia Bay here across northern Appalachia here. That goes through Bald Point and over towards near Apalachicola and Port St. Joe, is at least where they have the greatest potential for seeing that catastrophic flooding potential. So tomorrow, that expands northward as the storm races off towards the northeast and eventually kind of towards the east, and that kind of, at least forecast after that, it gets a little bit squirrely. But at least here tomorrow, the greatest chance for seeing any kind of flood potential extend from Tallahassee through central Georgia, central South Carolina, and southern North Carolina. And that's where at least where the WPC, the Weather Prediction Center, is putting out a moderate risk of seeing some flooding here. And again, we've already seen river flooding warnings here near the St. Marks River nearby here in Tallahassee. So again, we want to watch out that you're staying away from the water, as that is the biggest killer for these storms. So GFS rainfall is still kind of the same in line here with the Weather Prediction Center, with having that kind of that bullseye stripe, so to speak, from the Gulf here near, again, near Wakulla counties upwards through the Carolinas, and then Euro also pretty much kind of showing the same story here with that stripe of really intense rainfall. But again, storm surge is also the biggest threat here when it comes to actually the storm surge, or when it comes to actually hurricanes. We want to make sure we stay weather aware of that. So we're actually going to kind of take a break here, or actually, sorry, we're actually passing this off to Robert to give us more information.
All right, thank you, Aaron. We're going to go through one last overview of the storm here. Just quickly going to go through some of the rain bands as they're moving closer towards Tallahassee, and then end off with the cone to show you what the current setup of the storm is. So right now at 11:30 p.m., we have right here is the center of the storm. And there's your eye right there as it's starting to form. And we could be seeing what we've talked about before, a little bit of an eye wall replacement cycle, which could mitigate the strength of the storm, but it all sorts of depends on how fast it could get going, and it may not be able to happen at all. And if it doesn't, then we could see it get all the way up to maybe Category 4 strength. So again, the storm moving off towards the north and east right now. We're seeing some of our heavy rainfall rates just west of I-75, northwest of Tampa. And that's going to be really dumping a little bit of rain here. We could see maybe 2 to 3 inches of rain from this storm in these parts of Florida before all things are said and done. But it's also important to remember this yellow on the background here is a tornado watch. So any of these storms, particularly you see these more discrete storms out on these rain bands here, can sort of rotate and make their way into what could be a tornadic storm. So it's important that even though we're watching this hurricane here, that we're not just having a hurricane threat, we also might have some tornadoes mixed into it as well. So all important things to remember. Again, if you're in Tampa right now, storm surge is definitely the biggest threat with this storm as it makes its way off towards the north and east. That will start to mitigate, but still we're watching for those winds to really kick in that storm surge there. But again, let's zoom out just to really show where this storm is in relation to its landfall point, which will likely be somewhere just east of Tallahassee. It's moved a little bit west in the latest outlook, so continuing to creep towards Tallahassee here. A lot of concern for the city as we could see very strong winds this storm, maybe even up to hurricane force and beyond that if the track continues towards its west there. So if we could pull up the cone real quick just to show people where this storm is at and where we're expecting the storm to move through over the next few hours here, we could see again a little bit of intensification with the storm as it moves forward. And it could get up to maybe Category 4 strength. That's what we just said here. So here is the state of play with all the storms here. We do actually have a tropical depression out east in the Gulf and then Franklin here, but our main concern is, of course, Idalia. And it is west of Florida here. If we could zoom in on the storm there, this is the storm as it continues here. You can really see the power of it and how large it is, and these rain bands just sort of wrapping around the storm here. And here is that marker there of where they expect it to make landfall as a Category 4 storm. So not a lot of variance in this track here, pretty much almost locked in to a Big Bend landfall, maybe a little bit of west and east here, but if zoom in a little bit on where that marker is just to show you in relation to where that storm could make landfall and impact here in the Big Bend area. 130 mile per hour sustained winds right around the center of this storm, and we could see hurricane force winds going well beyond it, including Valdosta, where they haven't seen a hurricane warning there in recent memory. That's been a while since they've seen one because, of course, if you remember, Michael has actually avoided that area when it went through last time. So lots of these areas have not seen a storm recently that has been this strong, and we haven't actually seen a Category 4 in this area in recorded memory because we had a Category 3 that was in 1950 down here. We had a Category 3 that was in the 1800s, but a Category 4 haven't seen in Appalachia Bay in quite a while. So it's going to be making its way off towards the north and east, and this area right here, the Georgia-South Carolina border, could still even be a hurricane strength up there. So it's important that even if you're far away from the coast, you're still taking this storm seriously and moves off towards a tropical storm as it moves out through. So let's talk timing real quick before we close you out here. 8 o'clock a.m. is right now we're looking at for that rough timeline estimate. Of course, storms can slow down or speed up, so don't take that as a complete guideline. We're looking for the early to mid-morning hours as a good guide for when the worst conditions and that landfall will likely happen. Could see in Tallahassee here conditions deteriorating as soon as maybe even an hour and a half from now, as you're seeing some of these outer rain bands already making its way into the city here. And we could expect to see these conditions continue to deteriorate over the next, like I said, around hour and a half. That will continue throughout the midday on Wednesday, and we likely really won't start to see things let up until the evening hours. So if you're in Tallahassee now, the name of the game is hunker down. No more time for prep. Just head indoors, head inside, and make sure that you are staying safe during this storm, because as it moves, it's going to bring these strong hurricane force conditions here, and we could see widespread power outages. We could see heavy wind and lots of rain, lots of sheets of rain coming down, torrential rain, and again, that chance for storm surge on the Appalachia Bay. So throughout the night, we will continue to keep you updated around every 30 minutes, and at the start of every hour, we'll continue to keep you updated with these tropical updates. We'll give you updates on where the storm is, how strong it is, and then starting at around 6 a.m., maybe a little earlier than that, depending on the track of the storm, or a little later, we will start wall-to-wall coverage, before this storm makes its way here, and we'll have wall-to-wall coverage all the way through the landfall and through its effects into the early or late morning hours, and then we will give you updates from there on out. So again, thank you for watching us throughout the night tonight. Keep it here, and we'll continue to keep you updated throughout the evening.